Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by asking you to visualize a very specific object.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is it?
I want you to picture that notebook you bought back in January. You know the exact one I'm talking about.
Oh, the planner. Yes.
Right. Maybe it was a bank, or maybe it was one of those fancy dedicated planners with the thick leather cover. It had that really crisp, expensive paper smell.
And I probably bought a whole new set of pens for it, too.
Oh, exactly, the color-coded ones.
Yeah.
Because, this year you were finally going to be organized, and on January 1st you sat down and you just mapped out, well, everything.
The gym schedule, the meal prep.
The novel you were definitely going to write, revenue targets for your business. You probably even, color-coded your hydration goals.
Yeah, researchers actually call that the January ritual.
Yeah.
It is almost religious in nature.
It really is. And in that moment, when you're looking at that fresh, white page, you feel like an absolute god of productivity. You feel inevitable. You look at the year ahead and you think, this is it. This is the year literally everything changes.
It's a powerful drug. It's this phase that psychologists call uninformed optimism.
Uninformed optimism.
Right, because you're high on the idea of the result, but you haven't actually tasted the work yet. I mean, you see the podium, but you don't feel the alarm clock going off at 5 a.m.
Exactly. But here is the question that haunts me, and I think it probably haunts everyone listening to this right now. If we open that notebook today, what does the page for this week actually look like?
Yeah, it's usually not pretty.
Is it filled with nice little check boxes? Is it dog-eared and worn from daily use? Or is it just blank? Or, honestly, worse, is the notebook buried under a stack of junk mail on the kitchen counter?
Yeah.
Totally forgotten.
For the vast majority of people, statistically speaking, it's buried. The gym membership is collecting dust. The novel is permanently stuck on chapter 1. And the revenue targets are already looking pretty shaky.
And that's when the shame sets in. We look at that expensive planner and we think, I'm lazy, I'm undisciplined, I can't stick to anything.
But that is entirely the wrong diagnosis. And this is a crucial point we need to make right out of the gate. The problem isn't that you are lazy. The problem isn't that you aren't smart enough or driven enough. The problem is simply the math.
The math of time.
Exactly. We all operate on this default societal setting called annualized thinking. It's this subconscious belief that because the year is 365 days long, we just have this massive abundance of time to correct our mistakes.
Right, so if I blow off the gym in February...
No big deal. You have 10 months to catch up.
It's the mañana syndrome. I'll just do it tomorrow. But when your actual deadline is December 31st, tomorrow is a very safe, very dangerous place to live. It's basically an eternity in brain time.
And that is the silent killer of goals. Annualized thinking completely destroys urgency. You look at December and it feels like a different lifetime. And without urgency, execution dies. You end up prioritizing the easy thing right now over the necessary thing because the consequences feel so far away.
So our mission for this deep dive is to just completely dismantle that way of thinking. We are exploring the concepts in the book, The 12-Week Year by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. But we aren't just looking at the book. We're also pulling in case studies and practical guides from Dan Mintz, who founded the 12-Week Breakthrough Program. And we've got insights from the productivity experts over at Asian Efficiency.
And the big promise of all this source material is incredibly bold. The central claim is that you can get more done in 12 weeks than most people do in 12 months.
Which, I know, it sounds like a late-night infomercial. Get rich quick, lose weight while you sleep. But when you actually read through the source material, it's not about working longer hours or grinding yourself to dust. It's about redefining the fundamental math of time.
Correct. It is a complete game changer in perspective. In this system, a year is no longer 12 months. A year is 12 weeks. Period. End of story. There are no 4 quarters. There is just this one 12-week cycle.
I love how they break down the conversion. In this new world, a month is now a week, and a week is now a day.
And that's exactly where the urgency comes from. If a week is a day, you can't afford to have a bad week.
Right.
Because if you slack off for a week in a 12-week year, it's like slacking off for an entire month in the old system. You can't recover from that easily. The stakes are suddenly much, much higher.
So we are going to walk you through this entire system today. We're going to cover the philosophy, which they call periodization. We're going to look at the foundation, which is vision. Then we'll get into the tactical planning, the process control, which is how you actually execute when things get tough, and finally, the psychology of why we resist change.
It is a totally comprehensive system: vision, planning, process, and scorekeeping.
Let's jump right into the philosophy. Why 12 weeks? Why not 6 months? Or 10 weeks? The authors argue that the problem with the annual plan is intimately tied to what we call the year-end push.
Yeah, think about what happens in almost every corporation, and honestly for a lot of individuals too, in November and December. Productivity just spikes.
Everyone is suddenly hustling.
Right. Sales teams are frantically closing deals to hit their end-of-year quotas. People are staying late to finish projects before the holidays. There is this intense, almost manic focus and energy.
Because the deadline is finally staring them in the face.
Yeah.
It's the panic monster, to borrow a phrase from Tim Urban.
Exactly. But notice what actually happens during that push. People suddenly stop doing all the low-value stuff. They stop aimlessly scrolling social media. They stop holding pointless hour-long meetings. They focus entirely on the one or two things that absolutely must happen before the ball drops. The 12-week year is designed to replicate that year-end push energy, but to sustain it. Instead of having that burst of productivity once every 12 months, you have it 4 times a year. You are constantly closing in on a deadline.
But wait, doesn't that sound exhausting? I mean, living in a state of constant year-end panic sounds like a one-way ticket to severe burnout.
That's a very valid fear, and it's a common objection. If you just sprinted with that December energy for 52 weeks straight, you would absolutely burn out. But that's not what the system is. The system creates a focused burst of 12 weeks, which is then followed by a built-in recovery period.
Oh, right, the 13th week.
Yes. The 13th week is typically used for review, for resting, and for celebrating what you accomplished. It's a rhythmic pulse. It's tension and release, not a continuous flatline sprint.
There's also a really interesting point in the text about predictability. They argue that annual plans are almost destined to fail simply because you cannot predict the future.
It's the weather forecast problem. You might have a pretty good idea of what the weather will be like tomorrow, or maybe even next week. But can you tell me what the temperature will be on a specific Tuesday 8 months from now? Of course not.
If I tried to plan a beach picnic for a Tuesday 8 months from now, you'd call me crazy.
Exactly. Yet annual plans routinely ask us to define specific actions we will take in November when we are currently sitting in January. It's impossible. Markets change. Technology shifts. You might get sick. A competitor might launch a totally new product. When you plan 12 months out, you are just guessing.
So annual plans inherently become objective-based. You write down what you want to achieve, like increase sales by 20%, but you can't accurately plan how you're going to do it that far out.
Right, but with a 12-week horizon, the predictability goes way up. You can see 12 weeks out, you can plan specific actions, tactics that you can actually execute. It shifts the entire plan from being about the what to being about the how. You move from wishful thinking to concrete tactical execution.
And this brings us to the concept of periodization. Now, this isn't originally a business term, right? This actually comes from sports.
It does. It originated with Eastern European Olympic training programs in the 1970s. At the time, the dominant philosophy, especially over in the West, was basically more is better. Train every single muscle all the time as hard as you possibly can.
The classic Rocky Balboa montage approach.
Exactly. Run until you drop, then lift weights until your arms fall off. But those Eastern European coaches realized something fundamental. The human body cannot adapt to multiple stressors at peak intensity simultaneously. If you try to maximize your heavy bench press and your marathon time in the exact same month, you will get mediocre results in both. You might even get severely injured.
So they broke it down.
They broke the training year into isolated periods of 4 to 6 weeks. For one period, they would focus intensely on just strength. They would overload that specific capacity and ignore everything else. Then in the next period, they would shift entirely to speed. By focusing on the critical few disciplines for a short time, they maximize their overall capacity.
And the 12-week year just takes this exact concept and applies it to life and business. You can't dramatically improve your health, save your marriage, double your sales numbers, and learn conversational French all at the same time with equal intensity. You just can't. You have to periodize.
You have to focus on the critical few factors that will drive the most impact in the next 12 weeks. And here is the truly beautiful part of this new math of time. If you have a bad 12-week year, say you get sick, or a major project blows up in your face, you don't have to wait until next January to reset.
Right. That's the fresh start effect.
Yes. You take a breath, you take a break, you celebrate whatever small things you did accomplish, and then you just start a new year. You are never more than 12 weeks away from a clean slate. Think about how that changes your psychology. In the old system, if you fail your diet in March, you feel like you've blown the whole year. Oh, well, I'll try again next January. In this system, you just had a bad Q1, and your new year starts fresh in April.
Okay, so that's the underlying philosophy. We're compressing time to create urgency, predictability, and intense focus. But the sources we're looking at are very clear that you cannot just start with a calendar and a spreadsheet. You have to start with your head, or really more specifically, your heart. We need to talk about vision.
This is exactly where a lot of type A personalities completely tune out. They want the spreadsheets, they want the raw tactics. They say, look, don't give me the woo-woo vision board stuff. Just tell me what to do so I can go do it.
I am totally guilty of that. I usually skim right past the vision chapter in most business books.
Most people do. But the authors, Moran and Lennington, are absolutely adamant about this. Execution is hard. Doing new things is very uncomfortable. If you don't have a compelling, deeply emotional reason to do the work, you will quit. When the alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, a goal like, I want to increase market share by 2%, is not going to get you out from under a warm blanket.
They actually dive into the neuroscience of this, which I found totally fascinating. It's basically a turf war between two different parts of your brain.
It is the battle between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is the ancient reptilian part of the brain. It is hardwired for survival. It loves safety. It loves the status quo. So when you try to change your behavior, when you try to wake up an hour earlier to run, or make those 50 cold calls you usually avoid, the amygdala perceives that discomfort as a literal physical threat. It screams, stop, this is unsafe, go back to bed.
That's that wave of resistance we feel. That's the I really don't feel like it voice. It's not just a character flaw or laziness. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism firing off.
Precisely. But then you have the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC. This is the part of the brain responsible for imagination, for complex planning, for visualizing the future. The source text mentions that when you vividly imagine a compelling future, the PFC actually lights up on brain scans. And here is the absolute key to all of this: neuroplasticity.
This is the idea that the brain physically changes based on how you use it, right?
Yes. Think of your brain like a really dense forest. Every time you think a thought or take an action, you are walking a path through that forest. If you constantly think about your fears and your comfort thoughts like, I'm too tired, I'm scared of failing, I'll just do it later, you are trampling down a wide, paved, easy path straight to the amygdala. It becomes the path of least resistance.
So worrying is actually training your brain to be an expert at worrying.
Exactly. But if you spend time actively visualizing a compelling future, if you vividly imagine the life you truly want, you are hacking away a brand new path in the prefrontal cortex. You are literally strengthening the neural connections in the part of your brain that controls executive function and discipline. You are physically training your brain to override the amygdala's panic signals.
So having a vision isn't just self-help fluff. It's literal brain training.
It is the fuel. Without it, the engine of your execution will stall out the moment you hit the slightest uphill climb.
The text outlines 3 different types of vision that you need to align. First, there's the aspirational vision, which is the massive, big picture, 5, 10, 15 years out. It's the ultimate dream life. Then there's the 3-year vision, which is more grounded. What does a great life look like exactly 3 years from today?
And then, crucially, you have the 12-week vision. This is the bridge. It connects the long-term, somewhat cloudy dream to the immediate, actionable plan. If your 12-week goals don't clearly and obviously lead toward your 3-year vision, you're just spinning your wheels.
I want to share a story from the source material that really perfectly illustrates the power of having a vision. It's the story of Sal Durso.
Oh, this is such a powerful example. Sal was running a successful financial firm, and out of nowhere, they hit an absolute crisis. A group of key advisors unexpectedly left the firm, and they took their clients and a massive chunk of the company's revenue with them.
That's a total nightmare scenario. You walk in on a Monday morning and half the desks are just empty.
It is. And Sal understandably felt like a victim. He was just staring at the charred earth of his business. He was angry. He was blaming the people who left. He was stuck completely in the past, constantly calculating what he had lost. As you can imagine, the morale of the remaining team was in the toilet.
So he took a trip to get away from it.
He went up to Alaska to clear his head. He was rafting down this river, and he noticed that the entire surrounding area had been devastated by a massive forest fire recently. Everything was black, charred, totally dead. It looked exactly how he felt inside about his business.
But then he saw something in the ashes.
Right. He saw these huge fields of vibrant purple flowers. They're called fireweed. The river guide explained to him that fireweed is the very first thing to grow back after a forest fire. It actually needs the intense heat of the fire to pop its seeds open. It's the ultimate sign of regeneration. It prepares the dead soil for the new forest to grow.
And that one visual metaphor just shifted everything for him.
He stopped looking at the charred earth of the lost revenue and started actively looking for the fireweed of new opportunity. He realized the fire had essentially cleared out the dead wood in his firm. He went back to his remaining team and crafted a powerful new vision of rebirth for the firm. That vision, that specific story, gave them the energy to rebuild rather than just mourn what they had lost.
That's the real shift. It wasn't a new spreadsheet or a new marketing tactic that saved his company. It was a vision. The text talks about moving your thinking up a sort of mental ladder. You always start at impossible. Then you ask, well, what if? It moves up to possible. Then you ask, how might I do this? And it becomes probable. Finally, when you are actually executing, it becomes a given.
And you simply cannot climb that mental ladder without a vision that pulls you upward. If Sal had stayed down in impossible just looking at the burnt trees, the company would have folded. Guaranteed.
So let's assume we have the vision locked in. We are emotionally connected to why we are doing this. The prefrontal cortex is fired up. Now we need to know what to actually do. We need the plan.
And the 12-week plan is fundamentally different from a standard annual plan. The most important distinction the authors make here, and it's something people get wrong all the time, is the difference between goals and tactics.
Let's unpack that, because I think most people use those two words totally interchangeably.
Yeah.
What's the actual difference?
A goal is the end result you want. Lose 10 pounds, earn $10,000, write a book. The problem is you cannot directly do a goal. You can't just sit in your office chair and successfully lose 10 pounds right this second.
Right. I can't just squeeze my eyes shut really hard and earn money.
Exactly. But you can execute a tactic. Tactics are the daily, controllable actions that eventually produce the goal. Eat 1,200 calories today. Call 5 new prospects. Write 500 words before breakfast. You have 100% total control over the tactics. You have 0 direct control over the goal.
The source text gives really specific criteria for writing these tactics. They have to be immediately actionable, they have to be complete sentences, and they have to start with a verb.
This removes ambiguity. It creates instant clarity. If your tactic just says something vague like networking, that's not a tactic, that's a concept. When you wake up and see networking on your to-do list, your brain doesn't know what the next physical step is, so it gets overwhelmed and just skips it.
So how do we fix a bad tactic like networking?
A proper tactic is attend the Chamber of Commerce breakfast on Tuesday at 8 a.m. and introduce myself to 3 brand new people. That is highly executable. You can check that off. At noon on Tuesday, you either did it or you didn't. There is no gray area.
Simplicity is also really key here. The overriding rule they stress is less is more.
Because the biggest mistake people make, especially when they are super motivated in week 1, is trying to do way too much. They set 10 different goals. A 12-week plan should have 1 to 3 goals maximum. And for each of those goals, you identify the critical few tactics. If you try to execute everything, you will accomplish absolutely nothing.
Now, this leads us to the weekly plan. And this is a major point of confusion for a lot of people adopting the system. The weekly plan is emphatically not your general to-do list.
No, and this is a critical distinction. Your standard to-do list is filled with the background noise of life. Buy milk, pick up the dry cleaning, answer that random text from your aunt, schedule the dentist appointment. If you let those reactive things dictate your day, you will never, ever get to the important strategic work.
The weekly plan is like sacred ground.
It contains only the strategic tactics from your 12-week plan that are due this specific week. It is a direct derivative. You look at your master 12-week plan, you see what needs to happen in, say, week 4 to stay on track, and you carefully copy only those tactics onto your weekly plan for what for.
So it aggressively filters out the noise.
Exactly. And the discipline they teach is to spend the first 15 to 20 minutes of your week, usually first thing Monday morning, mapping this out. And then the first 5 minutes of every single day is spent reviewing that specific plan.
It creates what they call action bias. You don't wake up on Wednesday morning and sit there wondering, what should I do today? The plan already tells you.
Think about how much mental energy we waste every day just deciding what to do next. Should I check my email? Should I work on the big presentation? Should I go get coffee? The 12-week year system completely eliminates that decision fatigue. You just look at the plan. The plan says call 5 prospects. You pick up the phone.
There is a fantastic example of this action bias in the text featuring a guy named Patrick Moran.
Oh, the startup story. This is the absolute classic example of annualized thinking versus 12-week execution.
Right, so Patrick was trying to raise capital for a new startup, and the economic climate at the time was just terrible. He'd spent 6 full months slogging away trying to get funding, and he was getting absolutely nowhere.
Because he was working, but he wasn't executing. He was having endless coffee meetings, endlessly tweaking his pitch deck, waiting around for callbacks. He was completely stuck in the "I have plenty of time" mindset.
So he finally switched over to a 12-week year.
He forgot all about the past 6 wasted months. He drew a line in the sand and said, "I have exactly 12 weeks to save this company." He created a rigid tactical plan. Week 1, write the master investment memorandum. Week 2, push it through legal review. Week 3, target specific investors.
And the result of that focus?
He finished a 100-page legal document in a single week. He got it greenlit by the lawyers in week 2. He closed the entire round of funding on October 10th. He did in a few short weeks what he hadn't been able to do in 6 months, entirely because he created artificial urgency in a highly specific tactical plan. He stopped, broadly, trying to raise money and started executing the daily tactics required to get the money.
Dan Mintz, one of our other main sources, refers to these tactics as MIT's most important tasks. He suggests translating your big goals into 3 to 5 MITs for the week.
It's the exact same principle. You identify the critical few actions that actually move the needle, and you aggressively ignore everything else until those are done. If you get your 3 MIPs done by 11 a.m., the entire rest of your day can be absolute chaos, and you've still had a massively successful day.
Okay, so we have the philosophy, we have the vision, and we have the tactical plan. But as Mike Tyson famously said, everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
And you will definitely get hit in the mouth. Life is going to happen. You will get the flu. Your laptop will crash. Your kids will have an emergency at school. This is where Section 4 of the system comes in, process control.
How do we actually keep executing when things get messy and complicated? The sources outline a very specific weekly routine.
The routine boils down to 3 mandatory steps. Score your week, plan your week, and attend the WAM.
Let's talk about the WAM first. The weekly accountability meeting. This is huge. And honestly, reading about it, it sounds a little terrifying to some people.
Because it creates real vulnerability. But the data heavily supports doing it. There's a fascinating study cited in the text from Fast Company magazine. The article is called Change or Die. It looked at severe heart patients who were told by their doctors that they needed to drastically change their lifestyle, their diet, exercise, quitting smoking, or they would literally physically die.
You would think the imminent threat of death would be enough motivation for anyone. Change or die. That's the ultimate ultimatum.
You really would think so. But the study found that only 10% of the patients could actually make the lasting changes on their own. 90% of them reverted back to their old comfortable habits and just faced the lethal consequences.
That is genuinely terrifying. It really shows how incredibly weak human willpower is against ingrained habits.
However, the study found there was one specific group where the success rate wasn't 10%, it was 80%.
What was the variable? What was the difference?
Peer support. The patients in the successful group met regularly with other patients to talk openly about their daily struggles and their progress. They weren't alone in the fight. They had a community holding them to their intentions.
So the WAM is basically that exact peer support group, but for your business or personal goals.
Yes. It's a very short meeting, maybe 15 to 30 minutes max. You meet with 2 to 4 other people who are also running their own 12-week year. You each report on your results from the past week, you share your raw execution score, and you state your firm intentions for the coming week.
And what do you actually say in this meeting? Like, is it just a feel-good cheerleading session?
No, it needs to be brutally honest to work. You literally say, my goal was to run 3 times this week. I only ran once. My execution score is 33%. I struggled because I didn't prep my gear the night before and I was too tired in the morning. Next week, I commit to scoring 100%.
And the key insight here from the book is about the true nature of accountability. The text says you cannot hold someone accountable the same way you hold a bag of groceries.
Accountability is ownership. It's entirely internal. The WAM isn't about your friends yelling at you because you missed a workout. It's about you standing up and taking ownership of your own performance. When you are forced to say out loud to another human being, I didn't do what I promised myself I would do, it prevents you from lying to yourself. It fosters radical honesty. It totally removes your ability to hide in the shadows.
Another really vital tool for process control is time blocking. The source material gets very specific about dividing your calendar into 3 types of blocks: strategic, buffer, and breakout.
This is all about intentionality. The rule is, if you don't control your calendar controls you. Other people's emergencies and priorities will instantly fill any void you leave open.
Let's break them down. First, strategic blocks.
This is your deep work. It's a solid 3 hours of completely uninterrupted time. No phones, no email tabs open, no, hey, got a minute, interruptions from coworkers. This is where you execute the high-value tasks from your weekly plan. Writing the book chapter, building the marketing strategy, coding the new app feature.
Most people claim they absolutely can't do this. They say, my boss won't let me go offline, or my clients demand I be instantly responsive.
And the authors point out that is almost always an excuse. If you are totally unavailable for a mere 3 hours, the world will not end. But if you never manage to do deep, focused work, your career might end, or at least stall out completely. You have to aggressively fight to protect this time.
Then there are buffer blocks.
These are designed for the noise, answering emails, returning phone calls, doing expense reports. The brilliant idea here is to group all these low-value reactive tasks together. Instead of checking your email every 5 minutes all day long, which completely destroys your focus, you do it all in 1 or 2 dedicated 30-minute blocks. It's vastly more efficient.
And finally, the block that really surprised me when I read it, breakout blocks.
This is crucial to the whole system. A breakout block is a period of at least 3 continuous hours during normal business hours where you do absolutely no work whatsoever.
Wait, during normal business hours?
Yeah.
Like Monday through Friday?
Yes, between 9 and 5.
I can hear corporate managers everywhere screaming in terror, you want my employees to just take 3 hours off on a random Wednesday afternoon?
The text quotes the old proverb, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. But it goes much deeper than that into brain chemistry. It's about neuroplasticity again. Your brain physically needs significant downtime to recover, to form new connections, and to synthesize ideas. If you are just grinding 24/7, your creativity literally dies. Your complex problem-solving skills erode. The breakout block creates the mental and physical energy you need to actually execute the intense strategic blocks.
It's incredibly counterintuitive. The idea that to get more work done, you actually have to stop working.
You have to work better, not just longer. You cannot be on 100% of the time. If you don't intentionally schedule rest, your body and your brain will eventually take it anyway, usually in the form of severe burnout or massive procrastination.
So you have to schedule your free time with just as much rigid discipline as you schedule your work time.
Exactly. It has to go on the calendar.
Okay, let's move into section 5. Measurement. The scorecard. That ties directly back to the WHAM we talked about, because you have to bring a hard score to that meeting.
And this brings us back to the vital difference between lead indicators and lag indicators. Most people are completely addicted to lag indicators.
Give us the formal definitions of those.
A lag indicator is the final result. I lost 5 pounds. I made $10,000 this quarter. It's history. It has already happened, and you cannot change it. If you step on the bathroom scale and you haven't lost the weight, staring at the digital number is not going to change it.
But we obsess over them anyway. We refresh our stock portfolios constantly. We check our views or likes on Instagram every 10 minutes.
Because they are the payoff. They feel good. But the problem is, you cannot actively manage a lag indicator. You can only manage a lead indicator. A lead indicator is the specific daily activity that historically produces the result. I ran 10 miles this week. I made 50 targeted sales calls.
So the 12-week year system focuses obsessively on what they call the execution score.
Right. This is simply the mathematical percentage of your planned weekly tactics that you actually completed. If you mapped out 10 tactics for the week and you fully completed 8 of them, your execution score is 80%.
And the magic number the authors tout is 85%.
The data they've collected from thousands of users shows that if you consistently complete 85% of your planned tactics week over week, you will almost certainly achieve your ultimate goal.
I really love this aspect of it because it completely removes the paralyzing pressure of perfection. You don't need to hit 100%. You can mess up, you can miss a few things, and you can still win the quarter. It gives you permission to be a flawed human being.
But, and this is a big but, it also creates what the authors term productive tension.
What exactly is productive tension?
It's the sheer discomfort of looking at a bad score in black and white. If you score 40% in week 3, you can't hide from it. The numbers do not lie. That discomfort forces you to make a conscious choice. Do I quit the goal entirely, or do I step up my game next week? It removes your ability to delude yourself that things are going fine when they clearly aren't.
There's a really great real-world example of a guy named Adam Black in the text. He used a super simple calendar system to track his daily lead and lag metrics.
And by forcing himself to confront those numbers daily, not waiting until the end of the month, but daily, he increased his unit volume by a massive 65%. He realized very quickly that if he didn't do the uncomfortable lead work today, the lag score would be a 0 tomorrow. Consistent measurement inherently drives consistent execution.
Okay, we've thoroughly covered the tactical side. Now we really need to go deep into the mind. Section 6, the psychology of change. Because even if you have a perfect color-coded plan, our brains will actively try to sabotage us.
The authors introduce a concept called the emotional cycle of change, or the ECOC. It has 5 distinct phases, and honestly, if you are listening to this right now, you have definitely experienced them. You'll recognize this pattern immediately.
Phase 1 is that uninformed optimism we talked about earlier.
Right. This is the very start of the 12 weeks. You have the crisp new planner, you vividly see all the amazing benefits of the goal, and you see none of the underlying costs. It's super exciting. You tell all your friends, I'm going to train for a marathon.
Then inevitably comes phase 2, informed pessimism.
This usually hits around week 2 or 3. You suddenly realize, oh wait, I actually have to get up at 5 a.m. every day to train, and it's raining outside, and my knees hurt. The shiny newness wears off completely. You start to see the actual physical cost of the change you committed to.
And then you drop into the absolute danger zone, phase 3, the valley of despair.
This is the graveyard of goals. This is where most people quit. The pain of the change is at its absolute highest point, and the benefits of the goal still seem impossibly far away. You feel incredibly stupid for even trying in the first place. You start rationalizing. You think, why am I doing this to myself? My life was perfectly fine before I started this.
I think everyone listening has a valley of despair story. Mine is usually right around week 3 of any strict diet. The hunger is visceral, the weight hasn't really dropped yet, and there's a beautiful high-definition pizza commercial on TV.
That is the ultimate moment of truth. The source text explicitly states that vision and process control are the only 2 things that will drag you through the valley. You need the vision to vividly remember why you are choosing to suffer, and you need the process, the wham, the weekly plan to physically force you to take action, even when every fiber of your being wants to quit.
But if you could just push through, if you just blindly keep executing the tactics on your weekly plan, you eventually hit phase 4, informed optimism.
Yes. The success finally starts to become visible. The difficult actions start to form into automatic habits. It gets noticeably easier. You start to see the initial results. The scale actually moves. The tough client finally says yes. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And finally, you arrive at phase 5, success and fulfillment.
The new behavior is no longer a struggle. It is now just who you are. You don't have to violently force yourself to go to the gym anymore. You just go naturally because you are now a person who goes to the gym. The identity has fully shifted.
Speaking of who you are, let's talk about the profound concept of commitment. There is a very funny, very dark little story in the text about a breakfast of bacon and eggs.
I love this one. It perfectly illustrates the difference between being involved and being committed. In a breakfast of bacon and eggs, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed.
That is a very stark way to put it. The pig literally has its skin in the game.
It's dark, but it illustrates the crucial difference between interest and commitment. When you are merely interested in a goal, you only do the necessary work when it is highly convenient for you. You do it when the circumstances are nice, when the weather is good, when you happen to feel highly motivated.
But when you are truly committed,
you do the work regardless of the circumstances, period. No excuses, only results. The internal question completely changes from, should I do this today, to, how will I get this done today? If your car breaks down, an interested person uses it as a valid excuse to miss the important meeting. A committed person walks 3 miles, takes an Uber, or steals a kid's bicycle to get there.
the text suggests focusing heavily on what they call keystone actions to help maintain this level of commitment, identifying the 1 or 2 absolute core activities that historically produce the vast majority of the desired results.
This is a great survival tactic. If you are totally overwhelmed and drowning in the valley of despair, you need to radically shrink the plan. Find the one keystone action. If you are trying to get fit, maybe the single keystone is just physically walk through the front doors of the gym. Even if you have a terrible workout, even if you just stretch for 10 minutes, the commitment to simply show up is what truly matters. Just don't break the chain of the keystone action.
We are heading into the final stretch of the system here. Section 7 covers real-world applications and this overarching concept of greatness in the moment.
We touched on this briefly earlier, but we really need to address the pervasive cultural myth of work-life balance.
Oh, the idea that we should strive to give perfectly equal time and energy to absolutely everything in our lives. It's pushed as the holy grail of modern living.
And the authors argue it's actually a guaranteed recipe for total mediocrity. If you try to balance everything perfectly every single day, work, kids, fitness, hobbies, marriage, you will spread yourself so thin that you'll make absolutely no significant progress in anything. The 12-week year actively advocates for something they call intentional imbalance.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning you consciously choose to be unbalanced for a short, defined period of time in order to make a massive breakthrough. Maybe for this specific 12-week cycle, you focus intensely, almost exclusively, on launching your new career. Because of that, you might have to neglect your golf game completely. You might not see your friends as much on the weekends, but then in the very next 12-week cycle, you intentionally shift that heavy focus. You put the business on maintenance mode, and you focus intensely on your health or repairing your relationships.
You can have it all, just not all at the exact same time.
Exactly. Periodization applies to the macro level of life, not just daily business tasks. By actively embracing imbalance intentionally, you actually create a much deeper, more satisfying balance over the long term of your life.
And finally, this brings us to greatness in the moment. The text uses the Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps as the prime example here.
This is arguably my favorite conceptual shift in the entire book. We culturally think that Michael Phelps became great in the exact moment he stood on the Olympic podium and they put the gold medal around his neck. We only see the public glory.
But the text argues that the medal ceremony was just the delayed evidence?
Correct. The gold medal is just the physical evidence of his greatness. The actual greatness happened years earlier in the dark. It happened at 5 a.m. in a freezing cold pool when his entire body ached and he desperately didn't want to be there, and he consciously chose to get in the water anyway. It happened when he pushed himself through his own valley of despair over and over again.
Greatness is a choice you make in the present moment.
It is entirely the choice to do the necessary difficult thing, especially when you absolutely do not feel like doing it. The future results are just the eventual confirmation of those daily private choices.
That is so profound. It implies that you can be great today. You don't have to wait months or years for the final result to claim that you possess greatness.
You claim it instantly by executing your planned tactic, right now, in this minute. When you actively choose to pick up the phone and make the terrifying sales call instead of mindlessly checking Facebook, that exact moment is greatness.
So we have unpacked the entire system today, from the core philosophy of compressing time with periodization, all the way to building tactical weekly plans, suffering through the whams, scoring your execution, and surviving the brutal psychology of the valley of despair.
It is a lot to take in at once, but remember, the entire system hinges on a fundamental shift in your personal identity.
Dan Mintz talks about this identity shift in his breakthrough program. He says you have to move from being someone who tries to being someone who ships, someone who consistently executes.
And that really is the ultimate overarching goal of the 12-week year. It's not just to make more money or lose weight. It's to become a person who actually does what they say they're going to do, to build an unshakable foundation of trust with yourself.
Let's do a final rapid-fire recap for you, the listener, before we go.
Number 1, stop annualized thinking immediately. A year is now 12 weeks. Create that artificial urgency. Number 2, start with vision. Connect emotionally to your deep why so you can override the amygdala's fear.
Number 3, build a plan based purely on actionable tactics, not just lofty goals. Focus heavily on the how. Number 4, institute process control. Plan your week, meticulously score your daily execution, and get a peer group for your weekly accountability meeting.
Number 5, measure execution, not just results. Aim for an 85% execution score. Don't aim for flawless perfection. Aim for relentless consistency. And number 6, expect the valley of despair to arrive on schedule. Push through it using your compelling vision and your rigid weekly routine.
And we want to leave you with a closing thought directly from the text. It's a beautifully haunting quote from the poet Mary Oliver.
Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
That truly is the ultimate question, and the 12-week year is the tactical answer to exactly how you do it. Listen, do not wait for January 1st to roll around again. Your new year can literally start today.
Or tomorrow morning at the absolute latest.
Start your year today. Thanks so much for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you in the next 12 weeks.